All right, Montgomery Catholic, welcome to episode 2 of Partnering with Parents. I'm your school president, Justin Costanza. And again, we have this beautiful set, the obligatory globe and flag. We lack still our 2 ferns with which we should be between. But we have 2 beautiful guests. Tonight, our middle school and high school president or principal. She just got a job. You just got a career push here. Our principal in the middle school and high school, Ms. Eileen Aaron, and Lauren Hoyer, who is a theology teacher extraordinaire, mom of 1 and a half, soon to be 2, and a fantastic complement to all things that Montgomery Catholic is trying to do in the lives of your children, particularly from a faith-based perspective. Tonight's episode of Partnering with Parents is called Dating Relationships. And so a few disclaimers. You know, the first thing is this is kind of a tough conversation. This may be something that is hard for parents to hear. It may be hard for parents to want to hear about it. We're going to talk about you having, as parents, tough conversations with your kids. We're going to give you some talking points. We're going to ask you to avoid a few things and ask you to really hone in on a few other things. And most of what we discuss tonight is going to be very high school age, high school centric, but really it is something that anybody can hear. Our Montgomery Catholic community needs to hear what we're going to share. So if you are a younger family, maybe, what we would ask is maybe don't watch it with all the kids towards the end, where we're going to talk about a few more difficult topics and, some intimate topics, pun intended. And we're really going to focus on those high school relationships. We're going to counsel you, the parent, and talk about why middle school might not be the time to start some of these relationships and the tough things we're going to see. Are you guys excited and ready?
Absolutely.
All right, both people who are watching right now want to hear everything you have to say. Our one final disclaimer would be, I know everybody wants to know, these socks from Sock Religious have Our Lady of Victory in our school colors on them. If you're watching this live, tomorrow we play for a state championship. And if you're watching this in the posted recordings, hopefully you know that Montgomery Catholic beat Fife in the state championship. So, Our Lady of Victory, pray for us. Now stop looking at my socks and look at this beautiful face. Miss Aaron and Miss Hoyer are going to share a little bit with us. Now let's start with kind of understanding. This high school setting is kind of like a fishbowl. Mm-hmm. People are watching all the time. Kids come and go. They'll never leave this community. And so as we date within the fishbowl. As we make friends within the fishbowl. As we break up, they're still in the fishbowl. Mm-hmm. And so that's something really to remember as a parent. Wouldn't you say that's important?
Absolutely.
Y'all are so excited to talk. And now I'm going to let them. But first, there's more. If you want to communicate with us, we'll answer some questions at the end of the episode. And there is a chat function, but in that chat function, you'll see abarenko@montgomerycatholic.org. So that is Miss Elena Barenko, our school counselor in the high school. That is her email address. The best way for you to send notes, messages, or questions throughout this episode of Partnering with Parents, and please only do that if you're watching it live with us, you may send to that email, and then at the end of this broadcast, because we'll do all of our talking first, we'll address some of those questions. So it is time to get into the nitty-gritty. Now, why, you guys, is it even important for us to talk about dating?
I mean, I think dating in high school is complicated, right?
It's complicated. That's a good way to say it.
And there's just a very small kind of window of what a healthy relationship actually looks like in a dating relationship in high school. And so I think that to talk about dating really does give this window into the lives of our high schoolers for the parents that can be really, really helpful for them as they start to, or maybe continue to, walk this journey with their child.
Right, and that's really what we want to do is help the parents empower them to let them be able to talk to their children, whether they're starting to talk about dating or starting to talk about boys or girls, or whether they're in a dating relationship. We want you to be able to communicate and ask those tough questions. So we want to kind of give you an insight of what we're seeing here as well. We have them for 8 hours a day, and so we see a lot that you may not see, but we want to help you be able to communicate with them.
And we acknowledge every family's in a little bit of a different place.
Right.
The relationships that exist within each family are unique, and your relationship with your children is different than even your friends or your family members. Or, we see so many unique relationships.
Right.
So we want you to kind of take what we say tonight with a grain of salt and know that we need you to look at this through your lens. But please don't dismiss the value in what we share from the school perspective, because remember, it's that fishbowl, and your kids, you the parents, your kids are living in that fishbowl with these fish that we're talking about every day. So I think it'd be important. Eileen, give us a little bit about what does a healthy relationship, a healthy dating relationship in high school really look like?
So I always tell my children, and I tell the kids that I work with here, that it's really important to establish good friendships. And it's really important to start establishing those early, 4th, 5th grade, middle school, and working through the difficulties of friendship, when someone lets you down or someone gossips about you. But it's really important to have the friendships where you can be yourself around those people. You don't have to put on an act or a show, and you just feel comfortable with them. And then those friends want what's best for you. They're encouraging you to do well, and they're going to call you out when you're not. So that's the basis of it.
Talk a little bit, Lauren, about what a relationship in high school really is.
Yeah, the hope is that it's really a friendship.
Yeah.
That's really what we're hoping for. And I think that when we look at dating relationships, because we talk about it being this kind of thin line, it is this opportunity for the kids to learn how to treat somebody of the opposite sex. So, it's not all bad. But at the same time, we have to be really, really cautious of them getting too attached, too serious, because that makes things more complicated.
That attachment you talk about, again, we said every relationship looks a little different, but at some point, boys and girls have this opportunity. It's a temptation, really, to get over-attached, to be super attached. Attachment looks a little different. Expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, so anytime, there's a romantic relationship or you're in a new relationship, it's very reinforcing, right? Like, it feels good, it's fun, it's exciting, and so you want to keep going back to that thing, to that person, to get that reinforcement, to get that excitement. But what happens is over time, sometimes we see our students, they continue to go back to the relationship for that, but in the process, they kind of lose attachments to other things that had brought them, a lot of happiness before. So maybe friends, family, sports. They continue to go back to their relationship for all of those positive feelings and leave behind some of these other relationships, which, if something goes wrong in the relationship later, it makes it harder for them to get out of it because they're stuck. They feel like
they feel stuck.
And they've kind of put all their eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
They've alienated themselves from all the people they love and support them.
Right.
And it can be super tough.
Right.
And Eileen, so we mentioned at the beginning, we're teachers and principals and moms. And, Eileen, you have how many kids?
5.
5 kids ranging from
23 to 11.
23 to 11. So she's kind of been through a lot, okay? She's a new grandmother. She's starting to see what parenthood was really worth, and that's having grandkids, right? And so your perspective tonight, I want our parents to remember, is both as a mother and as this administrator at school. And it's not really that it's the administrator at school. It's the person, we get to be there in the brokenness, right? We get to be there when our students have failed, are looking for redemption, need God's grace and mercy. You see that all the time. They flock to you and our other fabulous theology teachers. So talk a little bit when those kids get stuck, that they've been alienated. What does that look like?
It's sad. I know that they can go back to their friends, but they don't see it because they have sort of alienated themselves. And I think it's really important as parents that when we see our student or our children start in these relationships, to remind them and to encourage them and maybe even make them, they have to, they continue hanging out with their family, they continue hanging out with their friends, they continue putting all the effort they used to into that sport, in practice and working out. They continue their job. They don't give these things up just because of one person.
And we want them to make that relationship with God a priority.
Yes.
And the best thing a parent can do is model that.
Right.
Right? We want to make sure that our parents are helping them keep the relationships out of those dark spots.
Right.
Inviting I almost said spouse, inviting the boyfriend or the girlfriend to do things with the family.
Right.
Sounds so simple. It's super powerful.
It is.
And parents set the relationship tone when they do that thing where we invite them into the family.
Right.
We're going to talk a lot more about how parents can help set the tone in a relationship, but kind of an overarching theme to all of this is we want to empower parents to remember to ask this question. How is this person making you a better person, and how do they bring you closer to Christ? We ask kids that all the time. As a parent, you have the ability to do that as well. All right, let's jump in to this investment we've talked about. And phones, social media, so much goes into this. Really, the phones and social media play a huge role in relationships. And we, the parents, and we, the administrators, we didn't have to deal with Snapchat and Instagram and Facebook. Not that kids are on Facebook, but we didn't have to deal with all of these things. TikTok, should be its own thing. But they play such a role in the relationships. You know, they're here together for 8 hours a day, and you would think that relationship kind of hits a little bit of a pause when they go home. It's kind of the opposite. Right. They go home and they have all these opportunities to continue talking, chatting, texting, sending pictures, sending videos. The list goes on, and that's really tough.
Yeah, I think high school relationships look really different, in the world of phones and in the world of social media. I mean, a lot of times you even see that relationships start kind of virtually, right? Because somebody slid into their DMs.
Wait.
Yeah.
Can I pause you?
Yeah.
Did you just say slid into your DMs?
Yes.
Parents, don't be distracted by the socks. Did you hear what she said? The DM, the direct message.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, that's how foreign this is to me. They can send a direct message through any of those forums, whether it's Snapchat. It's kind of like a direct text message, direct message through Snapchat or Instagram. That's where we see a lot of that. And your kids will say, oh, they DM'd me and I'm blah, blah, blah. Who? Do you even know this person? Sometimes they just like your name that's social and public, and they slide into your DM. Go ahead.
Right, so it makes it really easy. It's almost less risk involved in starting a relationship because you can just direct message somebody. Another big thing is getting their Snapchat username, right? And again, you just get the Snapchat username and you start sending them, random pictures of half of your face, and then they respond, okay? That is often how these relationships are starting. So I just think as parents, maybe not assuming that they necessarily know the person, right, but asking, where did you meet, or how did you start talking to each other, whatever it is. But then of course, like you said, then the communication just never stops. I mean, it is a constant temptation for them, kind of going back to that idea of attachment. They can constantly be attached to the person through their phone,
just through technology.
And we see so much about how somebody treats us there, and how they treat other people is going to be how they treat us in person. We can learn a lot from that. And Eileen, I know, we see kids who can't even speak to each other and communicate all the time.
Right, and as adults, we know that's so important in a relationship. But these kids aren't learning how to do that because they're doing it all through technology. And then they don't even get that chance to see that person physically and how they interact and how they treat others. It's all kind of a facade through that, social media.
And we want to teach our kids, right? We want to teach our kids what to look for. And sometimes when you, the parent, are having a hard time knowing how to begin tough conversations, have those things we just said. How does this person treat their mom, their dad, their friends, their teachers at school? And your student is not gonna want to talk to you about this. They're just not. But if they can't answer that question, then they really don't know a lot about that person. And this is the person that they're now talking to alone. This is the person they're sending pictures of themselves to. Even if it's like you said, that half awkward Snapchat face, oh, I got to hit that back, respond, slap. I mean, it's ridiculous, okay? I know parents, if your kids have Snapchat, you've seen them do that weird face, and that's their form of communication. We have to teach our kids how to communicate. All right, we've talked a little bit about that. Let's jump into what does it actually look like to be dating in high school? Give us some of the terms, parents. We're not going steady anymore, okay? Bring us up to the new millennium.
So usually you are going to hear, if you ask, your child, are you dating or something? Usually you're going to hear, I'm talking to somebody. So it's just kind of quote unquote, I'm talking to them.
Okay. And you and I are talking right now.
Yeah.
But that is not what they mean.
No.
In fact, that would be wildly inappropriate. Okay, so talking, that's a thing.
Yeah, and it can kind of mean a lot of different things, right?
Okay.
And so, as a parent, you want to ask more defining questions about really what that means. It can mean really something as innocent as they just started talking. They just started communicating. Usually talking means like really on the phone, like texting, FaceTiming, that kind of thing. So, maybe they just started communicating on the phone. But one of the big questions that I'm going to ask as a parent is, how long have you been talking? Because that's going to tell you a lot. And if my child is like, well, I've been talking to this person for 6 months, 8 months, then I start to wonder, why have you been talking for so long without any deeper commitment, right? Because not always, but sometimes this idea of talking can be this kind of like emotional and physical entanglement without any kind of commitment involved, and that gets kind of dicey.
And then, so as these kids continue to talk, again, that would be like they are in not in love, and they want to transition to whatever that next phase is. They have to have a DTR. They have to define the relationship. And at that point, they may say, hey, we are exclusively boyfriend and girlfriend.
Yes. Yeah.
And so that's something to ask your children about as well. What are they naming it? What are they calling it? Would they talk to anyone else?
Right.
Well, are they talking to anyone and you? And boys and girls see all these things very, very differently.
Right.
And parents, please do not assume that your son doesn't want to talk to you. Moms, dads, please do not assume that your son does not want to talk to you. And I say son specifically because so many times they kind of get a pass. Oh, they're quiet, or they're different, or, they are just as emotionally tied to this relationship as anybody, and oftentimes they need somebody to be able to talk through. So that's important. All right, we've talked about so much already, and we're going to move right along. We're right on time, and again, we try to keep this at about 30 minutes tonight. We may go a few minutes long because we're going to give some really practical ideas at the end. We're going to talk about some tough stuff for the next 10 to 14 minutes. Let's get into some of the practicals about how parents can help foster healthy dating relationships. And Eileen, I know this is something that we talk a lot about with the kids, so now we have an opportunity to talk to the parents.
So we talked about, establishing friendships, and we've talked about a little bit about communication. But if they're in this relationship, we really need to set some boundaries for them. We can't expect them to know those boundaries. So things like, the boyfriend or girlfriend shouldn't be home if parents aren't home. They shouldn't be there with them. There's no reason for that boyfriend or girlfriend to be in your son or daughter's room, even with the door open. Things like FaceTiming and Snapchatting, that should all be done in public in your home. Really, there's no reason for them to have technology in a private place in your house. It should be somewhere public with the rest of you.
And so it's easy for us to just say this, right?
Yeah,
and
it
it's
is.
like parents may say, oh, they're not talking about my son, they're not talking about my daughter. And why would they say it's not important to have it in the phone, have their phone in their room? We see this at home all the time. You guys hear from kids in relationships all the time. That's where the stuff happens. Right? It happens when they are alone. It happens when they think nobody's watching. And it happens when other people may be in the room or in the house, but they, in their own little world, they don't have to worry about that. And so like you mentioned, phones, parents, a whole conversation can be had about at what age is your teen ready to have a phone. And I'm talking about a smartphone that has a camera, it has apps, it has internet, it has the ability to do more than just talk on it and play Snake, okay? So if you have a Nokia brick that you want to activate for your teen or preteen, you have my full support, and you're not alone. We have kids all in all stages of middle school and high school who do not have phones. And that's something that our parents hear from us regularly.
Right.
Do not be afraid to be the only one.
Right.
We said it last week. We'll say it this week. I'm confident we'll say it next week. Don't be afraid to be the only one. But
You're not the only one.
Yeah, you're really not. So setting some of those boundaries. And, before we talk more practicals, let's remind everybody, too, as a parent in a relationship with a spouse, whether you are yourself dating or divorced or happily married, we have to model these
Right.
healthy relationships.
Right.
And so some of the things we're asking for our kids to do, maybe we need to think really about doing them ourselves.
Right, and we talk a lot about that, of your actions speak louder than words, and that's what they see. That's what they. So how you're interacting with your spouse or your children, how you communicate with your children, and how you allow them to communicate with you, is important.
And these rules that we're talking about, whether your child's in a dating relationship or not, they're important.
Right.
You know, this is an opportunity for you to talk with your child about what is or is not important, how they can be a man or a woman for others, how they can be dedicated to their faith and form positive relationships, and what they seek in other people, what they want in a relationship. All right, so some particulars about phone, not texting, not FaceTiming, alone in your room, not having some of that. Lauren, some ideas too?
Yeah, kind of just speak to that, right? To why we don't really want them having their devices in their room alone. One of the big reasons is Snapchat, right? Snapchat is dangerous. I mean, it's dangerous for our kids because of its nature, right? That like they can send these things that disappear. And even, you know, for our parents, like, even in Snapchat, there's a feature where it's for my eyes only, and it's a locked, password protected feature. Every Snapchat has it. So if your child says, mine doesn't have it, it has it.
It does.
Yeah, and that for my eyes only is, you know, pictures that maybe they've been sent, or, you know, whatever it is that they want for their eyes only, and they want password protected. So check in on that, ask to see it, but that kind of stuff happens when they're alone in the room.
Yeah. And something that we see, you know, your kids, you either do or do not have a relationship with your children and their phone where they understand that you own the phone, that you, the parent, will parent their phone as well. If you do not have the understanding right now, we got to establish that. We have to do it. We have to do it right now. You can blame it on me. Tell your kid, Mr. Costanza, Miss Aaron, and that crazy Miss Hoyer who thinks she knows everything. You just wait till her daughter's old enough. They said, I got to do this. You've got to do this. And you've got to look at their phone with them sometimes so they know that this is an accountability. You're not getting in there to try to catch them, to try to punish them, to try to find out. Some of the toughest decisions they'll make is what to do when nobody knows the outcome or what they're choosing to do. Meaning, it's kind of the definition of integrity. We doing the right thing when nobody knows or when nobody's watching is to be a man or a woman of integrity. Our faith teaches us that we have to resist those temptations. And if we put our children in a situation where they're in their room with this device that at their fingertips can do anything,
Right.
then we have given them an opportunity to fail.
Right.
So when you're looking and you and your student are looking at their phones, you literally want to look in their apps and make sure their apps do what they say they're going to do. All the kids are going to hate me after this. There's a calculator app that literally is a way for them to send pictures to each other secretly, and it's called Calculator. And you wouldn't know if you didn't open the app. But if you see that your phone has 2 calculators on it, you might think, oh, there's something going on. Yes, I just sold your kids out. No, I don't care, because it's for their own good. I wish my parents would have done the same thing if I had a smartphone in high school. Thank goodness we didn't have this temptation.
Exactly.
When you're looking in pictures, there's a recently deleted. When you go to albums in an iPhone, I'm not as familiar, we don't see as many Android, but in an iPhone, in the albums of a photo gallery, there's one album that's literally called Recently Deleted, and they stay there for 30 days. And you can see what your child or children have tried to get rid of. So that's super important for you to be able to check. Checking their browser history. This is something that I tell parents all the time. If their browser history is 100% clean, they've deleted it to hide something.
Yeah, if there's nothing listed.
I encourage you, don't encourage your kids to delete their browser history. You want to see everything. And like you mentioned, hey, I was up till 3 a.m. You know what I usually see on browser histories for kids who are up till 3 a.m.? YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat. Those are the things they're going through. They're watching YouTube video after YouTube video after YouTube video, and it's probably not Montgomery Catholic Channel partnering with parents. Probably, just a hunch. I went a long way there. But, dating in middle school, Eileen, real quick, what are your thoughts on dating in middle school?
We've just talked about all these temptations for high schoolers, and we don't really agree or think that they can handle them. And I think it's too great of a temptation for middle school. They're not fully developed yet. They're not that mature. And I don't think it's necessary. And again, I'll go back to really good friendships are important. And there's a lot of drama that happens in middle school, and it's important to help your son or daughter navigate that drama. But throwing in dating relationships just adds to it.
And something that we talk a lot about with parents who reach out to us who say, hey, my son or daughter is going through this terrible breakup, and they just spill their guts, right? There's all this stuff happening. A lot of stuff happens. One resource that a parent needs to have in a situation like that is the parent of the other student. Because if you haven't established a relationship with the person your child is dating, with their parents, then I think we failed.
Right.
Because we have to kind of be in partnership. And I'm not saying you got to go out to dinner and be best friends, but you better know that y'all need to communicate about who's what and who's where and did they do and are they with and all those kinds of things. And so that open line of communication is super important. Right. Now, we've talked a lot about some very specific things. Talk, real quick about kind of the science of why we're worried about things that could happen. And I haven't been very specific about some of the things that we see happen. So I'll drop some of those on them, and then you help tell them why it's not important, why it's not good. When we say, hey, we don't want them to have their phones in their rooms, when we say we don't want them to be able to Snapchat and get away with the your eyes only portion of that device, they are doing things, or they have the temptation to do things that will lead to sin. And the types of scenarios that we see kids walk into all the time is the temptation to take a picture of themselves in some form of undress or salaciousness, and to either save it on their phone to show someone in person, or save it on their phone to send through a Snapchat that they think will disappear and go away, or to send to their significant other that they're in a dating relationship with because they think that's what mature young adults do. Or they may be propositioned to do that.
Right.
Somebody that they think they can trust, be it a friend or somebody they may be in a relationship with, may ask them to do those kinds of things. And if you have not allowed them into a space where they are alone and have the device, they cannot fall victim to that temptation. And we just have to be on guard all the time.
Right.
And that very physical manifestation of sin for these young people is something they deal with all the time. And what does it look like in the life, particularly of our boys, but not exclusively boys? On that device, they can access pornography. They can and they will, or they're going to be around somebody who does. 4 out of 5 of our high school boys access pornography on a regular basis, more than once a week. That's a mic drop. That means if it's not your son, it's his best friend. And they're going to be addicted to it if they don't have somebody like a parent step in and help limit the access to those devices. And now comes the science. They see it in a device, or they see it with a young relationship, and then what does that do to their psyche, to their body, to their future relationships?
Absolutely. I mean, we go through and we say like, oh, we really don't want them in their rooms alone together. And the reason why we're really hitting on that is because all the way back to the very beginning of this, dating in high school is complicated. And to add any kind of physical nature into an already complicated situation is just going to make it more complicated. And really, like, what we really look at is it's not just it's not just sex, right? It's not just this physical thing that happens that doesn't have any deeper meaning. Like, when a relationship reaches that point, and high school relationships do reach that point, I think that we need to be aware of what it's causing in their brains, right? So when two people have sex, there's a chemical release in their brain called oxytocin. And oxytocin is kind of coined as the bonding chemical. And oxytocin is released when parents meet their child for the first time. It's released when a mom is breastfeeding her baby, right? Like obvious moments of I am supposed to be bonded to you forever. And bringing that into a high school relationship where that chemical is now released and I think I am now supposed to be bonded to you forever is going to make things really messy. I mean, it's going to make things really messy if they break up. It's going to make things really messy if it starts to go wrong. And I just know that even as a mom of a 3-year-old, like my greatest desire is just to protect her. And I think knowing that as a parent just helps us to know why we're protecting our kids from it.
And Eileen, it can have lasting effects on their relationships in life.
Right. And I'd really like, when we talk about high school relationships or any relationships, really look at that other person as, would this be someone I would marry? Because that's what you're looking for, is that lasting relationship. And if it's not, then don't settle for it. You know, move on. And that really should be your focus of any dating relationship. Can I see myself spending the rest of my life with this person?
And it starts with our parents having tough conversations with their kids.
Right.
And you've taken the first step. You tuned in for a 30-minute YouTube broadcast from 3 folks who don't have it all figured out, but are totally committed to helping try. You know, we deal with this every day at school. When we talk about the photos and the videos and the relationships that are happening within our school, it's very real. And this is not a Montgomery Catholic thing. I want to be very honest.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It might be easy for a parent to say, oh, Montgomery Catholic has this going on. No, the world does. Yeah. And you choose a school like Montgomery Catholic because we have the faith foundation to deal with the reality of the social pressures that your children are going to face. They're in a place where when they make mistakes, and I'm the first one to admit we all make mistakes. I make very personal and public mistakes in my own life. And a place like Montgomery Catholic is a place where we can seek God's redemption and grace. And you as parents can partner with us when those mistakes are made. And we can help you and help your kids, because we said this last week. Our students, whether they admit it or not, they want the boundaries that we need to set for them. We talked a lot with Father Patrick and Father Connor last week about setting boundaries, healthy boundaries for relationships. And that starts with you guys at home. And it's not just about dating. It's not just about the physical. It's about forming them in their faith to be the person God has called them to be. And we don't want pornography and sex in high school in any form to be what teaches them what love is supposed to feel like. That is not how they should learn the feeling when that oxytocin is released and they bond with that person. It's so important that as parents, you guys are having those conversations. Now, in a second, we're going to wrap up and give you guys an opportunity. And Miss Branco says we've got a couple of comments that we may talk through. And one was kind of related to the physical side she just shared. And that we want to encourage you parents to understand. We talked about students in high school kind of taking that ultimate leap physically, okay? But there are so many things that are becoming normal in physical relationships between high school students that you as parents need to be aware of. They are becoming casual.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it is not, you know, we hear students say all the time, it's okay, we haven't had sex before. But we have XYZ.
Right.
Yeah.
Been very intimate with each other physically. And I'm not talking about kissing. So, and that is surprising to some of our students that that's not a good thing. And it desensitizes them to the healthy physical side of what a relationship should be like. And when they see it in their friends, or when they see it and they hear about it, like we mentioned in the parking lot and some of that kind of stuff. Another question had to do with how do we as parents look out for some of these temptations? We talked about the classroom, about the bedroom. Hopefully we don't have to worry about this in the classroom. We kind of talk that parking lot mentality. Ms. Hoyer, address a little bit of the parking lot, and I'm talking rooms to go, Target, and the Montgomery Catholic Park.
Yeah. A lot happens in cars.
A lot happens in cars.
A lot happens in cars. I think that we think that a lot would happen in rooms, but really a lot happens in cars. And we hear that a lot, just like the rumblings of, kids talking. And like you said, I hear that the places that they often are in East Chase parking lots, Target parking lots. And, I think one of the reasons is because you, as a parent, probably do track them on Life 360. And the reality is, when I'm looking at Life 360, I'm seeing that they're at Target. And so just really thinking through or asking the questions, like how long are they there? What times are they there? And I know that's really hard. I mean, I know that as a parent, you probably have a million things to juggle, but I know that a lot happens in the parking lots, and I would want to be aware as well.
Right.
And we hear some of those specific things, and we're talking specifically drinking, sexing, drugging, things they don't need to be around. Things they don't need to be around. It's happening, and if they're not doing it, they're around it.
They're around it.
Then we open that window, they become desensitized, and the next thing we know, they're participating. So it can be in front of them and them still not be participating, but those walls and those barriers that we're trying to build and create are coming down.
And and this is hard, following your kids on Life 360. You said all these things we have to juggle, and these are hard conversations to have with our kids, but they're so necessary to do now before they're gone and in college, and they need us right now. I used to think when my kids were little and they grew and they're out of diapers, I'm like, oh, I'm finished. We're not. No. They need us, and they need us to watch this and help them right now.
And we're planting seeds now that when they do go to college, hopefully enough has formed and matured there where they're able to make some good decisions for themselves. Right. All right, so those are a couple of the questions we got that came in. And Ms. Baranko, anything else out there in the YouTube stratosphere?
Yeah, do you have any specific boundaries you would set at your house for couples who might be dating?
All right, so some specific boundaries at your house if couples are dating. I'll let you guys give a couple ideas.
We mentioned a few of, they shouldn't be at home by themselves. Family, parents need to be there, not to be in their bedroom. And I really try to engage them with our family. Let's play a game, watch a movie or something, because I really want to get to know who that person is that my son or daughter is dating. And then my son or daughter will also get a sense, I think, of what we think of them, how we engage with them. They'll kind of get an idea after a few visits. Yeah, mom and dad like them, or no, they're not real pleased. And that matters.
We say there's only two outcomes for a high school relationship.
Right.
You're either going to marry the person or you're breaking up. Okay, right. And we can't all be the Cox family and the Harbin family. And Sam and Danielle almost under the wire right there at graduation. Everybody else breaks up, right? And we want our kids to know this is a person that we as a family are investing in, just like we would your future spouse.
Right.
And your future spouse is going to be part of our family. Why wouldn't we treat a high school dating relationship the same way?
Right.
I love the idea of sitting around and hey, if you're going to go in your room and watch TV, you watch TV with us.
Right.
Yeah, Netflix and chill. If you haven't heard of that, by the way, Netflix and chill, no. You can Netflix with fam is what you can do. And we're going to watch something right out here. And, Netflix is a whole nother conversation. Be sure you know what your kids are watching. There's all kinds of stuff that they can see on Netflix without you really even knowing it. But so that's a great opportunity for you as parents to just set those boundaries for that dating couple in your house. Any other thoughts maybe about anything in the household for them?
I would just reiterate the not going in your room thing, but because when I was growing up, that was a very big thing that my dad enforced, right? Boys were never allowed in my room. Even when I was, dating my now husband, if I had to go just to grab a book out of my room, he would stand, right at the edge of my door because my dad was so intense about it. But even if there were moments where I felt like, oh, Dad, it's not that big of a deal, I think that also there was this underlying, he was protecting me because
right.
He loved me, and
he helped foster
that.
He helped foster one of the healthiest marriages I know. I mean, you guys are like the bar. No offense to the Aarons, y'all are right up there together.
I mean, I'm trying to be like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
But very similar. I talked to my oldest daughter who's now married. I talked to her yesterday about this session today, and she fought us on all of this, but she looks back now and says the same thing. She's happy. So it is a fight sometimes. It is, but it's a good fight to have.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we're almost at 40 minutes, and so we want to say thank you guys. We're out of questions, but if you have future questions, you can send us an email at any time, either to Ms. Branco or myself. Just put Partnering with Parents in the email subject line and shoot us a question for a discussion topic that you'd like to have. You can stay with us right here. We're going to be live at 7 p.m. each Thursday night during Lent, as we will bring, tonight was the second installment of Faith, and we will jump into Virtue and Wisdom over the next 4 weeks. And Faith, Virtue, and Wisdom kind of being the theme during Lent that we want to hit. We'll continue to talk about relationships. We'll continue to talk about the things that are tough for parents when it comes to raising these high school kids. And we said it tonight, high school is complicated. It is difficult. And that leaves a very tough task for you, the parent. You're not alone. We want to partner with you, and we'll be here with you along the way. From all of us at Montgomery Catholic, thanks so much for tuning in for episode 2 of Partnering with Parents.